Every year we have a celebration, a religious celebration called Christmas Day, and everybody erects a Christmas tree. This is a very modern, contemporary Christmas tree, but normally my family in my house, I would put a real tree, a fir tree, and decorate it with lights and objects. Every year me here you'll see St. George on his charger, his horse, slaying the dragon. I believe St. George is the patron saint of England. Now this dragon here, breathing fire, is a different interpretation. This is our interpretation of the mythical animal, the dragon. I believe in China it has the similar head but more of a snake-like body. But this dragon here has wings, it can fly. If you look at the top of this building behind me, you'll see a round roof. This is what we call a dome. If you look at this young man here behind me we call Aladdin. Aladdin was a poor young man, a poor boy, but he met the princess, the daughter of the Sultan, and they had wonderful adventures. In England we have a show, it's called a pantomime, which appears at Christmas, and Aladdin is one of the most popular pantomimes amongst others. This young man in England, you'll notice on many houses, particularly in the countryside or buildings outside, they have this plant here which is trimmed square. We call it a hedge, and it's very important for your image to keep this nicely trimmed or cut so it looks good. In England, this evening I'm in the Hermé restaurant in Chinatown, central London. I had a wonderful meal here, and after the meal I met 5 wonderful ladies who are now followers of Moonai. So we're all going to say Jai. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Right now I'm standing in front of the National Gallery, one of our most famous art galleries in the centre of London, and it's a very important day for us at Moonai. Today we have reached 600,000 followers, so we're very excited. It's an amazing achievement, I think, and I'd like to thank all our followers for following me. You have an expression in Chinese, hen li hai, which I believe means awesome, fabulous, magnificent. You could say this entrance and this creeper here, this plant here, is fabulous, magnificent. You have an expression in Chinese, hen li hai, which I believe means awesome, fabulous, magnificent. You could say this entrance and this creeper here, this plant here, is fabulous, magnificent. We have in England a legend. A legend is a story of ancient times about King Arthur, this young boy. And King Arthur, they knew he was king because he could pull this sword from the rock. This sword's called Excalibur. He was the only person who could do it. We have in England.
It's Justin Glass speaking on a winter's evening in London, and such a pity, I'm not sure if your cameras will reflect it, that we have English architecture around us, whereas Chinese architecture, the beautiful up-tilted eaves, they should be more in evidence, is my feeling, because one of my interests is seeing how much Chinese culture has interacted with British culture over the years. It's just
Hello China and all my fantastic followers. You'll notice today for the first or the second time I'm wearing a hat. This particular hat is called a deer stalker. deer stalker. It's used for hunters in the countryside while they're hunting deer. You'll also probably recognise it from someone called Sherlock Holmes. He very famously wore this hat, a deer stalker. Hello China and all my fantastic followers. Hello China! Today I'm in central London and it's very exciting because there's a big parade, New Year's Day parade, and behind me here are some women, Chinese women who live in England, and they're going to take part in the parade. It's very exciting. And lots of people here. We have a rat, a snake, and other sort of animals, and in the distance there's a dragon. There are the dragon dancers. So it's going to be great. Hello, China!
Hello, China. I'm Lady Henrietta Rice, and I'm sitting with a very old friend, Alexander Weymouth, the 7th Marquis of Bath. First the King, the Prince, a Duke, and then the Marquis. So it's a very elevated title. Alexander will explain the history of the very distinguished members of his family.
Jonathan was a rough, witty rascal, but he did work his way up the ladder and skipped several generations, arrived when the second Viscount Weymouth was created first Marquis of Bath, and through that time they were the height of respectability through Victorian times. Can we say until the present day? But it was something like that.
China.
Behind me here is what we call a warrior. A warrior is a soldier, a fighter from ancient times. And this is his weapon here. We call this a spear. And this is, we call a shield. This is to protect himself. Behind me here is what we... Behind me here are what we call traffic lights. These you'll see all over. There are many around the world. They're to control the traffic. We call them traffic lights. Behind me here.
Alexander's been very busy in his life, and one of his chief passions was also painting. He's painted on the walls of this very beautiful house.
I did cover a lot of the rooms, but my son, moving behind me, took some of them down, so it's difficult for me to say how many rooms I've now covered.
Here, as part of the Lantern Festival, made by the Chinese from Chengdu, the Chinese artisans and craftsmen, we have a Greek theme, or there's a Greek theme this year. Greek history and culture has very much influenced the British culture. And for instance, here we have an example of a Greek temple, and if you walk around London you'll see a lot of the houses are sort of copies they have columns and similar style of construction. And this horse here is the famous horse Pegasus, the winged horse. Here, as part of the Lantern, behind me you'll see a statue on a stone structure. We call this a plinth. It doesn't have to be stone, it could be made in any material, but it's a structure on which you place something, either a statue, a vase, anything. Behind me you'll see a statue. Behind me here we have a model of Atlas, the Titan, in Greek mythology. His punishment from Zeus was to bear the responsibilities of the world and the heavens on his shoulder. Behind me here we have a... Notice this piece of furniture. Well, actually, this is what we call a chest or a trunk. It's either a wooden box or it can be made in metal or other materials, and the lid opens and you can store things in there. This is a chest or a trunk. Notice this piece of furniture. Well, actually, this is what we call a chest or a trunk. It's either a wooden box or it can be made in metal or other materials, and the lid opens and you can store things in there. This... Hello China, you'll probably be familiar with these exhibits here. These are made by a team of workers from Chengdu in China. They come all the way here to England, to Longleat, and they produce these magnificent lanterns for the Lantern Festival at Longleat. So at night, thousands and thousands of English people come to see these wonderful exhibits and objects made by Chinese craftsmen. Hello, China! I'm with the Marquis of Bath, and on the Longleat estate, in the last 2 years, they've been producing a delicious white and rosé wine. They grow their grapes in what was the walled garden and produce many bottles of this lovely wine, and Lord Bath is going to describe the way he designed the label and a little more about it.
Well, every Christmas I send out cards that are in this sort of design, and this is one of those cards I produced in the past and now used as a wine label.
I'm with the Marquis of Bath, and on the Longleat estate, in the last 2 years, they've been producing...
Hello, China. Right behind me is the most beautiful, very old-fashioned English sports car. It's called a Morgan, M-O-R-G-A-N. And I have very happy memories of a Morgan because my father, who's a car enthusiast, he owned Bentleys and all sorts in his day, drove us to school in the Morgan, and with our moment of delight was when our Panama hats flew off. Hello, China.
I was walking along the river here in Westminster, and there are a lot of tourists here because it's near the Houses of Parliament and the London Eye opposite, and I bumped into Yong. I was very interested in his camera, actually, which I'm very envious of, a very expensive camera. And Yong's going to say a few words.
Hey guys, I'm Yang. I'm from Beijing, China, and first time here in London. I'm traveling by myself. I got my Sony 7 III, and it's a better camera than the phone you're using.
Yes, I think it's better than our camera. We're very jealous.
Thank you.
I was walking along the... This is a leaf from a tree. We have an expression in English to turn over a new leaf. This means to make a fresh start or to repent. You could say that man made a terrible mistake, but he's turned over a new leaf and he promised not to do it again.
Alexander, the 7th Marquis of Bath, has been a very busy person in his creative life. He's produced 3 novels, a very lengthy autobiography, and Alexander will talk about them.
The novels were the Caricot, Pillars of the Establishment, The King is Dead, and there were some other novels, but they largely remained unpublished. Then autobiography, there was a very long work I did on that. It went on, and I didn't bring it to an end because there's still tomorrow to live.
Alexander.
Just walking through the street and we came across this. This object here is called a traffic cone. This is a rather lonely one because it's been left behind, but these are used to control the traffic or mark off an area on the streets of London and probably everywhere in the world. Just walking through the street here, we have a bay tree and cyclamen flowers in what we call a plant pot. This here is another example of a plant pot, and with these little cyclamen flowers and a mini hedge. Today I'm at an event in London, and it's been organised by a delegation from Yunnan province in China. And beside me are 2 wonderful ladies wearing the most magnificent ethnic costumes. They made them themselves, or they have a team in China, and they're keeping this tradition going, which I think is so important. I mean, these clothes and the hats are just wonderful. I think it's absolutely amazing.